Welcome, ladies. There's a couple of things that stuck in my mind with regards to the presentations that we had. The first one was the presentation from Aura, and what struck me the most is who she is, who she's becoming, and what she's becoming. But it stuck in my head for a very simple reason, is the example that she gives to people like my daughter who's 17 about what she can do and what she can become. I think a lot of people say that about Michelle Obama, but she's so far away from our lives. But seeing young ladies like this, I think gives a very practical example to people like my daughter about what they can do. A few other things stuck in my head as the presentations we're going through. Refilwe's presentation, for example, gave an example of the CEO round table. And a friend of mine, a lady friend of mine, was asked to come and become MC at that particular event. And she gave what I thought was a very profound response to the organizers. She said, "I will not come to be MC, I will come when you've got a seat for me at the table." And she actually turned them down, and she didn't take it up. That's Tembe Kumalo, if anyone of you know who she is. She actually turned them down and said, "I will only come when you've got a seat for me at the table." And I think that's an example that you gave there. Full Circle and the three businesses that we have in Full Circle have been going for about 8 years. Sapi is disappeared. For about 8 years now. It comprises of three businesses: Magna, Carta, TBWA, and HDI, which is the baby in the business, which is the youth marketing. It's a very good business. We've grown the business from literally nothing. I feel very dishonest when I say we have grown the business. I've been there, but Sapi has grown the business from literally nothing. We started literally from nothing. We had one client. We bought a franchise for the business from someone else. We had one client, which was Stanbic, and thank you very much, Stanbic, for the support you continue to provide us. But I just wanted to point out a couple of statistics. The business is doing very well. But 50% of our board is female. So Dr. Garwe sits on our board, Sapi sits on the board, and there's myself and someone else, so there's 4 board members, so it's 50-50. More than 50% of the senior management is female. 70% of our staff are actually female. I give those statistics because one of the questions that faces us is, do having women in businesses pay? For me, I'd say definitely pays. The final observation I'd like to make is in terms of outdated constructs that are used in looking at businesses and looking at the female factor in business. I was looking this morning at population statistics, demographics around Harare from the 2012 survey. The 2 million people that live in Harare, of that 2 million people, 52% are female, and I think that's an international kind of ratio that you find. There's a lot more females than there are actually males. But the statistics that I found most interesting was that 26% of the households are actually headed by women. Now, coming to outdated constructs, is in my mind, I think that figure is actually higher. The reason why it's reported as 52% of households are headed by women is the question that the enumerators ask is, which actually says nothing, isn't it? So effectively, the number of households that are headed by women, I'm sorry, I said who's the father in this household? So who's the man of the house? That's the question that the enumerators would ask. And they got 26%. But if they actually asked who was heading the household, I'm convinced that the number would be significantly higher. Just my thoughts. I'd like to find the thoughts of the other people that are joining me in the panel today. Can I start with Dr. Garwe at the end? Doc, if you can please just introduce yourself and just reflect on the presentations that were given very briefly.
Hi everyone. So my name is Dahlia Garwe. I'm the General Manager of the Tobacco Research Board. So I'm a scientist, which is perhaps different from the rest of you. I qualified in molecular biology many years ago. And when I joined my organization, it was very much a male-dominated organization. Let me just explain a little bit about my background. So I've got a BSc in biochemistry, and I've got a master's in biotechnology and a PhD in molecular biology. When I joined the organization, I only had my first degree, and then I was allowed to carry on and do the other 2 degrees, which was at the time unknown, because you're supposed to join an organization and literally whatever role you joined in, you probably stayed in that role for as long as you stayed in that organization. I have 2 children. When I joined the organization, I had in fact I just got married when I joined the organization. So when I decided to do my PhD, I just had my 2nd child. And again, it was a question of, this is a woman, you want to go away and do a PhD and leave your children. And as you can imagine, the relatives on the male side were not particularly pleased by my decision. But I felt at the time that it was really important that I furthered my education so that when I went to meetings such as these, I didn't stand up as Mrs. So-and-so. This is in the scientific world. I had to be Dr. So-and-so for somebody to actually listen to my opinions. So that is already an indication of how women were viewed at the time that I was starting my career. If you were Mrs. So-and-so and you stood up in a scientific meeting and you had an opinion, nobody was interested. But the moment you said, I'm Dr. So-and-so or I'm Professor So-and-so, then people stood up and they looked up and they listened to what you had to say. So that was the first thing. And it has certainly helped in terms of furthering my career. Now, when I listened to the 2 ladies speaking, I was very impressed, especially this organization that's run by women. I personally feel that the opinions that were expressed are in fact correct. When you think about it, if you look at an institution that's run by women, and I'm not being disrespectful to the men that are here, you will find that generally things are a lot more organized. There's a lot less drama when you have women running an organization. There's a lot less of the sort of things that we read about in the papers when an organization is run by women. And as I say this with complete respect for the men that are here. But the way we do things, the way we look at business is completely different. And it is that calmness that comes with being a woman, that nurturing spirit that comes from being a woman, that I think helps in running an organization smoothly. One of the things that my board chair is always saying is, Dr. Garwe, please remember, you're not the mother of all these people. You're supposed to be running a business. But I personally feel that that female touch is important, and I think the employees actually appreciate the fact that this is a woman who behaves like a woman. And I promise you, I've never tried to be a man in any of the roles that I've played. I've always been the woman that I am. I think as opening remarks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Doc. Before Aisha speaks, has anyone been to Carta, where Tobacco Research Board? Those that haven't been, I would say just find an excuse to visit Dr. Garwe and see what a professionally run organization looks like. Government-owned, profitable. If you go to their offices, it's the same as if you go to Delta offices or if you go to any of the professional organizations. Take time, go and visit and see what a women-run organization looks like.
Thank you. My name is Aisha Nyamweda. I'm the company secretary and legal executive for Stanbic Bank. I've been at the bank for quite a while, 15 years. In the previous life, prior to Stanbic, I was a public prosecutor. My qualification is law. The journey to my current position has been hard. It has had a lot of sacrifices. It has had a lot of reflections, mistakes, some positives, some learnings. And I would like to mention, before my collar or my necklace, I was an average basketball player. I did play professional rugby in South Africa. I also played Swaziland soccer. I was in the Swaziland soccer team. So all of this was a build-up because I was allowed and permitted, and I thrived in an environment where I could exercise such options in my life. My parents, or my grandmother and my mother, were very supportive of who I was, and I think that is something we as women need to always be cognizant of. Provide the same opportunities as you would to the male and to the female as well. In terms of the presentation, certainly I would say in a corporate setup like where I operate, there are some things that are relevant for females to thrive in business. One of those is just being confident with yourself. Learn to speak up, even when people think you're being too aggressive or too emotional. Make no apologies for that. I make no apologies for that myself. Do not be shy or to say, I am Dr. Garwe. This is what I have achieved. Be proud. We women tend to sometimes want to hide your qualifications or who you are because there are other males in the room. So I would like us to stand out more. And I think just be yourself. The white hair in my head is deliberate. It is a statement to say I will be myself, because it's not about my hair, it's not about my sex, it's about who I am and what I am able to do. And it has actually become a trademark. And funny enough, when I started wearing my hair the way I wanted in Stanbic, I suddenly saw the company, the females in the company's hair all changing. Even the dress codes were suddenly changing. So it is quite important. The last thing I would like to say is, when I was studying to be a lawyer, I interned at the usual NGOs, Masasa Project, Women in Law, what. The learning from them, we need to support each other. We should stop this thing of competing against each other. When we are united, when we have little groups, these clubs, why should the men be the ones with golf club teams and drinking, whatever? We should also do the same thing. Whatever it is, I think once we stick together and build a network, it can help us also grow.
Shinga, do you want to pick it up?
I wish I wanted to put some up on the rugby or something that you could attach yourself to. Thank you very much. I'm very, very honored to be part of this very esteemed panel. I think well, let me introduce myself first. I'm Shinga Rhuhwaya-Koti. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs and Marketing at Met Holdings Group. I'm one of 2 female directors. We have 4 directors in total in the group. So as far as equations go, I think 50-50, we're not doing too bad at the moment. Before I was at Met Holdings, I was the Head of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs for British American Tobacco for several years, covering Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi. And as cigarettes industries go, it's a very male-dominated industry, so a very clear and real history of what it's like to be in a male-dominated society. I was also in the banking sector prior to that with SAPI, which is where I know SAPI from, when we were together at Premier, now known as EcoBank. And I just have to take this point to say, as far as female bosses go, she was always one of those people. I can't see Sappy. I'm going to put, yeah, you need to. She was really one of those mentors, which made me, every time I had an opposite experience, I would think about how she mentored me and how she coached me. So I think we definitely need more female bosses who were like, or are like Sappy as well. In terms of the presentation, I really liked how we started. Aura, you're going to get mentioned a lot in this forum, I think, because you represent something that we're so proud to speak about at the moment. At the start of your presentation, you said, I'm the youngest female director, was it, at AB, manager at AB Communication. And I just thought to myself, I remember a time when I was 19, 20, and I was traveling around the world representing Zimbabwe as the only female representative of Africa at the time. And I only realized that at this point that I was the only female. It was something that was not conscious, that I was not conscious of, that I wasn't aware of. It wasn't about being proud or not being proud, it was just not a conversation that was being had at the time. So it's a very, very important and wonderful time that we are living at the moment, that we are having this conversation. We are owning our spaces as women. And I think I liked what Aisha said about being yourself and owning who you are and what you are. Because there is a lot of time when that video that I think it's Nike, where Serena Williams was talking, it's very, very apt, because a lot of times when you are a strong, focused, I'll use the word aggressive, because we are aggressive sometimes, you have to be. You're stereotyped. And there's a very, very, very interesting study that was done by one of the Ivy League universities in the US, Columbia University. They did a study which they called the Roizen study. And it was also about a venture capitalist called Heidi Roizen. And she had risen to the top of Silicon Valley in the US. Also one of the youngest venture capitalists, had done extremely well. And the professor at Columbia took her CV and her profile. So this profile had everything from, how she went to school, what her social status was, how many children, whether she was married, etc. So her full biography. And he gave it to a class of, I think it was 50, 60 students. But to half the students, he gave the real biography, Heidi Rosen, and to the other half, all he did was change the name from Heidi to Howard. And then he asked, the students read this profile, and he asked them, what do you think of this person? How do you rate this person? And what was very interesting from the study is that while 90% of the people who read the survey agreed that this person was exceptionally interesting and well accomplished, those who read the Heidi profile said they didn't like the person. They didn't feel that it was somebody that they would be friends with. They didn't feel that they would hang out with her or click with her. And 100% of those who read the Howard profile said, I want to be best friends with this guy. I want to join the gym with him. I want to be friends. And the conclusion of that survey was that, unfortunately, for men, success and likability are directly correlated, whereas for women, success and likability are inversely proportional. You can't, in a lot of instances, be both. So this is one of the challenges we have in the C-suite, that you have to strike that balance, and sometimes you decide you don't want to strike that balance, and then you have to live with people calling you all sorts of names, but it is what it is. So those are my initial comments. I want to just thank Refilwe for, it was a very rich presentation. I think one breakfast morning to discuss and really deep dive into everything is not really enough. So I'm hoping that this is the start of many sessions where we can dialogue and have discussions around this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting ideas coming up about being aggressive in the workplace, about women and drama. I'm not sure if we'll have time to dig into all those, but very interesting perspectives coming up. You want to introduce yourself and just say a few words?
Sure, I'm Davidzo Chitengu, and I want to take note of the Davidzo part. I'm 47 years old, turning 48 next week, yippee. I'm a global chartered management accountant. I work for Anglo American, and I've been there for like 23 years. I became a director at 28 in one of the smaller mining companies, but I won't belittle that. I come from a family of 3. I've got 2 brothers and a fantastic dad and fantastic mom. My mom was actually a biochemist as well, and she actually died doing her PhD. Yeah, she died of cancer. And I have really been blessed in the sense that I grew up in an environment where I was nurtured to succeed. I also was not put in a box. As far as achievements or housekeeping or interactions with the family, my parents did not discriminate. We grew up in the States, so that probably had some inclination on how we were brought up. And I am married and I've got 2 daughters and have also tried to inculcate that behavior in them. And what I find quite interesting is when we go on family vacations and my husband asks for a coffee, my brothers look at him like, do you not have hands? You know? And I think that that's very important. If I may just go back to my background, Anglo is a mining entity. From a global perspective, it's done very well on the gender perspective. We did have a female CEO who broke all barriers in the sense that 1, she wasn't South African, and 2, she wasn't linked to the family. And she had 5 children. Her name is Cynthia Carroll. It'll be good to read up on her. And she did a fantastic job and got the usual caricatures, especially in the South African media. So Anglo, from a gender perspective, I think they've done really well. I've come from, given my age, I grew up in an environment where the whole gender appreciation was not something that we're aware of. But when I go to your presentation, it's the fact that we're aware of it means there's something wrong with it. And if I may go back to my name, Davidzo, which is spelled David with a Z-O. So a lot of people think it's David. And I have been invited to quite a number of things with a Mr. in front. And I often wonder if some of the doors that have been opened to me are because they thought I was a David. I think about your Howard and Heidi story. When I've done management courses at your Ivy League schools and GIBS and all, when we do the profiling thing, I always come out as male, right? And then I think I am nurturing, but you'll find that I like the aspect where you say that you have to be what you are at a point in time. Because being an accountant, you find that my answers to most questions will be quite strict, will be very distant, will be very compliant, which would then, profile you in a certain manner. And to actually just close on the introduction, I want to apologize in the fact that when Lennox and Phil invited me to this, they did tell me that I could invite people, and I didn't. I think first of all, it's because I was told I could invite people, I think, a little bit later. But one of the things that we women do is, because we are so busy, it's very difficult to consciously help others, if I can put it that way. Because we have so many other people that we need to nurture. So I personally now do try and consciously invite people just participate in whatever a woman is doing. And I would hope that in a conversation 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're just talking about business. What can the individual bring to the table? It's not about you being male or female, young or old, black or white, private school, public school. It's about what do you bring to the table, and are your characteristics and your influence appropriate for the job at hand.
Just hang on to the mic. Thank you very much for that contribution. In fact, a round of applause. I was going to ask you to give a very big round of applause for Ora. I forgot when I spoke earlier on, because I think she does really deserve it for all the contribution that she's put in. If we can please do that. In all the presentations that have been done, a lot have been said about the discretionary spend and the role that women have in that discretionary spend. Is this dynamic the same in Zim? You can go first if you want. I'd like to leave you out of this one because. So, do women control the spend? Do you think they're going to control 75% of the spend as far as Zimbabwe is concerned?
I actually think they control more than that. But the problem is the decision making of the products and how it's marketed and all is being done by the men. I think, and I actually don't think that it's a paradigm shift as of like now. If I look at my grandmother, she made the call on what is bought, where do the kids go to school, Christmas, vacations, whatever. Women actually do make the decisions as far as the dollar spent. That's my take on it.
Do you agree, ladies? Shinga, you go first.
I agree, yes. I don't think it's a new phenomenon. I certainly believe it's probably more than 75%. And it's also regardless of whether you are in formal employment, in the C-suite, or a stay-at-home mom. I have friends who are stay-at-home moms and they control 100% of the budget and the expenditure in their home. So it is very prominent. I want to speak a little bit about how our, maybe the marketing or the communication teams or the brand development teams are cashing in on this, if I may. Because I think we aren't. We certainly aren't. I recall beginning of 2017 where one of the entities in our finance arm, Nedbank, was launching its housing development project. And we were sitting around the table and discussing, as a creative team, discussing how we would launch ourselves in the market. And obviously we would look at what else is in the market. And everywhere we looked, we would see on the billboards, it's a beautiful family of 4, light-skinned for some reason. Definitely a stereotype of what the ideal family is for Zimbabwe, apparently. And a lot of the communications around home ownership and housing had that kind of image. And I remember looking at the statistics for the national housing deficit, which is fast approaching 1.25 million. And I asked the team, because we had been giving mortgages for a very long time and housing loans and in the development space for a very long time, but we just hadn't communicated about it. So I asked the BD team, I said, can you just have a look at the statistics? Let's look and see of those who have been coming to us looking for the service. Let's see what they look like. What is their stereotype? And shockingly, they didn't fit what we were seeing on the pictures. A lot of the people who are applying for mortgages are single mothers, or are women who are not yet married. A lot of them were female. I don't think it was quite 50%, but it was significant enough that we thought we need to speak to them as well. So when we then launched that campaign, we said, we're not even going to go with a family, because I don't want to leave anybody out. I want whoever's going to look at this ad and say, I want to live there, should just have the money to do so. So I remember that the advert has, it's a piece of land being taken out of the earth, and you're saying, do you want a piece of the good life?
And it then speaks to anybody. You can be whatever your physical or marital status or life status is, it speaks to you. So that's just one example. I've seen it in a lot of cases. I think certainly a lot of issues to do with money are miscommunicated in the market. What I don't know, and that's also open for discussion, is whether it matters to women. I think because of a lot of what we've talked about is a lot of women aren't conscious of the power that we have. For a lot of women, it doesn't make a difference if that advert doesn't speak to them. And in the economy that we live in at the moment, a lot of people are driven purely by price. So they'll look, and because these are smart women, doesn't matter what's on the poster. I'm just going to look at what is the interest rate, what are the terms, how much deposit do I need, and they're making that decision. But the soft communications around spend, which then influence long term, do definitely need to be looked at in Zimbabwe, and we're not punching where we should be at all. That's my opinion.
I would certainly agree with Davidzo and Shinga. But I see more of the women dominating in the home aspect, you know, groceries and furniture and all these clothes and that sort of stuff. Where I would like and love to see more empowerment and more rigor and more input is in business. If I am within Stanbic, what amount of money is Stanbic spending on various products for women? What amount of money is Stanbic spending to ensure that there's a deliberate strategy or to ensure that women grow? I think in the business aspect we will find ourselves lacking, because the decision to spend in the business is then made predominantly by men. We don't have that much power, and because the men make the decision, sometimes they forget about some things that women need or want, because they want to drive a certain angle. That would be my take on spend.
I think, Doc, before you come in, two very distinct narratives seem to be coming out here. Everyone seems to accept that women have a very strong say in how families spend their money. But there seems to be a disjoint somewhere with the marketing messages that are being put out there, that a large majority of them are still targeting men, despite the fact that we accept that women have a very strong say in how money should be spent in the home. And the second narrative is that in business, which you've just brought up, is that in business, men seem to be the ones that have got a say on how money is spent, despite the fact that might reflect the fact that there aren't so many women high up in businesses, and that men still make the bulk of the decisions. But your perspective, Doc?
Thank you very much. I'm in agreement with what has just been said. The first thing is we do have to accept that despite everything, we're still very much a patriarchal society, and this we seem not to be able to run away from. And therefore, those decisions about how to spend the money are made from that viewpoint rather than from, you know, one thing that I want to perhaps mention with the agricultural sector, which is where I'm coming from, is that it is the women who do the work. When I look at the number of people that we employ in our organization, the ones that are coming in as task workers, 80% of them are women, and they're earning their own money. But at the end of the day, are they making the decisions in terms of how that money should be spent? And you find that in a lot of the situations, they are not. So yes, we may certainly make decisions in terms of, you know, how many dresses should we be buying for our daughters, perhaps even the schools that our sons should be attending and so on. But we don't really have power on the things that matter. So if you want to decide where are we going to be living, for example, it is the man who's making the decision. It is the man who's going to find the mortgage and everything else in order for you to go and live wherever it is that he thinks you should be living at. So yes, we're earning the money. And I think it's actually true that in the agricultural sector, it is a good 80% of the women who make the money. Most of the men are sitting at bars somewhere enjoying themselves. And when it comes to the time of selling products, and I'll speak of tobacco, which I understand, they're the ones who want to go to the market and sell the tobacco. And guess what? They don't even take the money back to those ladies who've done all the hard work. So when we go back to now to the boardroom, it is definitely who is in charge of that organization that makes the decisions in terms of where the money should be spent. And somehow then, again, we're losing the fact that it is mostly it is the women who are doing the hard work. Even at the lower levels, it is the women who are doing all the hard work, but it is those men who then sit in their sort of suits and round the table and decide on the spend. So it is a very difficult situation in that we really still need to change society and how society thinks. And you explained it extremely well, actually, that those are subliminal messages that are coming through all the time, and we don't realize it, but it is definitely a social construct that is there that we need to deconstruct. Thank you.
I'd like to direct a question at the two ladies that are, in a sense, involved in the banking sector. We're in an age of big data, and Zimbabwe is in a particularly unique situation where a lot of our transactions are being done online. Do you spend any time analyzing how much women, because you know who the women are, right? You know who your card holders, who women are. Do you spend any time analyzing how much women are actually spending and what they're spending on?
I would like to say, from a Standard Bank Group and Standard Bank Zimbabwe perspective, and that is certainly a journey we have started. We actually have a full unit that looks at that, because we have acknowledged the relevance of having the relevant data to make the right decision to properly price your product and sell your product. But I think in terms of gathering the detail, we're still probably at an infancy stage to then make use of that data. But it is a journey we have started. We've seen it is quite relevant. And I suppose by end of year, you'll probably see some difference to how we market a product based on that.
I'm going to give a short answer and say yes to your question, and then qualify it. I don't think, a lot of the people who are representing companies here represent very established companies, sound companies with sound boards. I don't believe that there's any leadership team that sits and makes decisions based on do they affect men or women. I think that, and this is to a point that Aisha made earlier, when we're in boardrooms, we're looking at the numbers, certainly from a finance perspective. We look at what makes business sense, what is the business case. And I think where you find women products lagging behind is because they haven't been able to be demonstrated. Not that they don't exist, but the teams that are responsible for demonstrating that there's a benefit to having this product for women haven't done the work. Correct, because if you look at the subject of your this seminar, it's do women make better businesses, and this word better just keeps nagging at me. I remember at nursery school, I don't remember where I learned this. Is that rhyme? Good, better, best, never let it best. Okay, so there's good, there's better, and there's best. And when you're in the boardroom, you're actually weighing those options. And often you have other options of where you're going to put your money, how you're going to spend your money. So if I'm in a situation where I'm saying, okay, we have to, for example, we launched a women's desk at Medbank, I think 3 years ago. Yes, it is an RBZ requirement to speak to the underbanked or the underprivileged members of society, but you have to be able, as someone sitting in the C-suite, to demonstrate, to show the numbers and say, if you attack this target market. If you speak to this target market, this is what it will translate to in terms of revenue, and it's better than option B. And I think in a lot of cases, it's just that simple. And often I find myself in that role where I'm saying, okay, I don't even want to discuss this as a woman. I've had sometimes you're sitting in a board meeting or in a room and a conversation is happening, a very general conversation about the economy, and you're asked, even though you're contributing, because I'm definitely someone who's contributing, when it comes to certain things, you'll be asked, Shingai, as a woman, what would you say to ABC? And I always think to myself, if I was a Muslim, no one would ever ask me, as a Muslim, what do you think? Or as a gay person, or as a polygamist, what do you think? Because I could direct that question to several men in a lot of these boardrooms, but it's never put to that point. So when you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to present product cases, or if you're in a business development team, I think one of the biggest tasks we will have, man or woman, is to be able to demonstrate the numbers and show that it makes good business sense. And it won't be difficult to do because the statistics already show us that it makes good business sense to target women.
I'd like to I'd like to build on that point a little bit, because I do think what's interesting is that large organizations, for all the many benefits that they bring, they battle a lot when it comes to revolutionary innovation, right? So incremental innovation happens a lot because it's easy to justify, right? If we improve by 5%, we'll get a 4% margin gain, everything is great. I think when it comes to really breakthrough innovation, often it's smaller startups that are willing to take those kinds of risks. And so a part of me really thinks that, yes, the business case has to be proven, but in terms of going out there and finding new and interesting opportunities, it's not something that large organizations do a lot of. And is it because the opportunity is not there? Not at all. One of the fastest growing insurance companies in South Africa is called First for Women. As the name implies, all they do is target women. Their entire business model is built around the fact that women are less riskier and therefore more profitable to service from an insurance point of view. Their offering is constructed around women, and they are a very successful organization. I find it impossible to believe that the idea that women are an attractive audience never came up in, I don't know, Liberty or any of the really big companies that we have. But I get the sense that they would have had a discussion about the risks perhaps, and what if we alienate men, and what if this happens, and what if that happens, and the idea is killed before it's even given a chance. And so I think for me, what I would love to be able to see from bigger companies is a willingness to take risks and try things. Because sometimes you have to have that, there's always a gap between everything you can prove and things that ultimately become successful. And sometimes it is about taking that risk, because you never know what could be the benefit.
I actually wanted to comment on exactly what you had said. I actually think from a business model perspective, women have actually been subsidizing women, because from an men, or the other whole society, so to speak. Because from an insurance perspective, it is proven that women claim less, as well as they understand their risk better. And on the banking side, I'm also involved in banking to somewhat. You'll find that your non-performing loans, women actually have better statistics when it comes to non-performing loans, and Kenya has actually used that statistics to grow. I can't remember the exact entity, but it was it's actually now a formal bank, whereby women used to, like, you know how you do a savings group, and they're now a proper bank, and I think they're like the second largest bank in Kenya. And that is because women, it's not even about them wanting to repay, it's the whole thing about what will people say about me if I don't pay, over and above that. And yeah, so it is an asset class that needs to be sweated, but I think your bigger corporates would see that it's subsidizing the other side. So yeah,
I'm very certain that I'm going to be fired after. No, I'm the chairman, I can't be fired. But I've only asked 3 out of like 20 questions that I had to ask, but I found the answers very interesting. I want to end because I'd like to open, we've only got like 5 minutes left, and I want to open to the rest of the audience just for their thoughts. But before I do that, just some final words. What are companies leaving on the table that they could do to improve the way they address women? Just some final thoughts. I don't know who wants to go first. You want to go first?
I think just to realize that when women are at work, we have a lot more to deal with than men. So if my husband is sick, it affects me. If I'm sick, it doesn't affect him. If my kids are sick, it affects me. So it's just that flexibility that does not, as you had put in your presentation, that does not disturb my ability to ascend. So it's making it user-friendly to my nurturing requirements or habits.
I would like to say, historically, companies have always said, if it's a women's event or something to do with women and a target for women, it's a social responsibility. I would love it if companies would make us more a strategic topic and put us on the strategy to say this is what we're going to do, as opposed to once we've finished with all the products, if we have some change, we'll donate it to the NGO. I think we must be more a strategic target group as opposed to a social responsibility.
For me, I think what is important is for everybody to look at each other in terms of the ability of the individual and not to worry so much about whether you're male or female. There's a lot of focus on the fact that if it's a woman's idea, then it's not such a brilliant idea. And that worries me a lot because I see it a lot on some of the boards that I sit on. People, if you say something, oh, okay. But if a man says it, oh, brilliant idea. And you see it all the time. So I think we need to recognize the fact that women are actually as good as the men in any particular situation. And what we need to be looking at is, yes, women do make the larger part of the population. Therefore, as an institution, we should recognize the kind of contribution that women can make to business, whether you're there in terms of management or whether you're there as the customer for that particular business. Thank you.
And I think we assumed in this room that all women are on the same side on this equation in terms of we all want each other to win. And I think the fact that Michelle Obama and the clip that you played in the beginning is speaking about that it's a very real issue. I think a lot of the time, very sadly and regrettably, it's not necessarily the men who are pushing us down or keeping us back. It's ourselves. We're our own worst enemies. And I think for me, it's just to say, let's be, in the words of Michelle Obama, let's just be a little bit kinder to each other. It is tough in the C-suite. And if you have a female boss or you are a female boss, just having that sensitivity as an organization or as other females to say, you know, it must be tough for her. I'm going to cut her some slack. I mean, there's situations where studies have shown that if you've got two directors, male and female, when the male director pulls meetings, everybody comes. When the female director pulls meetings, people are late, it's like, oh, they don't come. So it's just about, for ourselves as women as well, just being kinder to each other, being more respectful to each other, helping each other to own the space. I think if we are genuine in our support of each other, I think the men can only follow.
And from my side, I think it's to pick up on points that Shinga and Aisha raised earlier on. I think the biggest thing we can do for businesses in terms of what they're leaving on the table is to make the commercial argument, right? It exists. It makes sense. It's not about do-goodery. It's not because, you know, we want to, you know, have a nice picture of a whole lot of women and sacrifice our business for it. Absolutely not. It is a commercial argument that's doing, or rather driving, the progression of women in your organization, or diversity in a broader sense, has genuine commercial benefit. And I really think that, because people, it's very difficult to argue with numbers. It's very, very difficult to argue with Nike share performance, right? Like that for me is the big thing. Find the data, it's there, and use that to be your secret weapon, I guess, in making your commercial argument.
Numbers don't lie.
They don't.
Right, can I open this to the broader audience? Sapi had a roving mic somewhere. If there are specific questions.
If you could identify yourself and the organization that you work for.
Okay, my name is Chester Zimbabwe. I work for Redbank. More in the digital space, digital transformation. The point that Shinga raised and the response from Refilwe is quite intriguing around making a business case. But again, where large organizations don't feel some businesses are worth investing in. I think it's more now looking at what's going on in the digital space. A big bank will not be as innovative as a small player who actually sees a niche somewhere. They will probably do it better than a bigger bank would do. They will do it better than a bigger entity. I think MasterCard is an example. I attended a forum in Barcelona recently. They've actually put a lot of investment in smaller businesses to be creative and come up with ideas because they actually see the pain point than a larger organization and justify whether they should do it. So I think even as this forum on the female equation, if we put it even in a similar fashion as the Dragons, is a program that I watch here and there, you present your case, both men and women, you come and present your case to leading business people who actually have venture capital and are willing to help you along the way and make your idea worth it in growing your business. So it's something to think about. Even in Zimbabwe, I think there was an attempt in the past by some people to try and imitate the Dragons concept. I think it fell off the rails, but it's something that needs to be picked up as a country to stimulate young minds, both young boys and young girls, with good ideas on niche places where they actually solve a real problem.
Very interesting point that Chester makes. I'll let you. Do you want to go first?
Yes, I'd love to speak to that because I think that's exactly it. Big businesses struggle to innovate, and I think companies that have figured that out adopt. And I'm going to throw strategy words at you because I have to throw at least one, right, to prove myself. It's called an ambidextrous business model, and companies like Amazon and Nike adopt them. And all it means is that you have a separate business who don't have revenue targets. They don't report to the typical board. None of that. All they do is report to the CEO, and their job is to innovate. It's about how many patents, how many proof concepts can they actually generate. And my favorite example of that is cloud computing. The gentleman who developed the idea for cloud computing within Amazon specifically, he had mentioned it to his bosses over the period of 2 years, and the answer was always, no, we're a retail business. What are you talking about? We're not going to do cloud computing. No. And this young gentleman had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Bezos one day, and he mentioned it to him, and he was like, I think that's interesting. And he was pulled out of his business division and put on his own with the team to develop this cloud computing thing. And I can tell you now, it's the biggest contributor to Amazon revenue. And it's that. It's about saying, don't put them in your organization because all the barriers and reasons to say no are going to stop that innovation from going anywhere. You need them to be able to have the space to thrive and test and fail so that they can come up with new and interesting alternatives.
Yeah. So, big organization, you want to innovate, you want to disrupt a particular sector, you want to come up with products that are focused on women. Don't do it in your main business. Set up a small business. Get a clever young lady or clever young man. A clever young man that's in your business. Set him up with a separate business. Give him the resources that he needs. And he doesn't trade as Stanbic. He trades as a different kind of business, but he knows what he's doing in terms of building up a model. And that's how disruptors operate. They start off as side little businesses, and they end up being the dominant players in the market sector. So more contributions from the floor? There was?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Pamela Gonzura, and I'm the CEO for Zimbabwe Advertising Research Foundation. I've really found it intriguing in terms of the contributions that have come from you ladies, and I'm really inspired to inspire other women. Two contributions I'll make. The first one is to say I think there's a need for a lot of mentorship in terms of just bringing up the younger ladies, in terms of just allowing them to believe in themselves through showing them that it's possible to get to the top, and that at the top there is room for them. I think there's a need for strong mentorships. The second one is to say, maybe just a question to you ladies, is to say, what are some of the ways that you think we can employ in terms of just encouraging other women to aspire to be on boards, on different various boards, so that again we can increase the voice of women. Thank you.
Dr. Garwe?
I just want to very quickly address the last point that you brought up. I think the issue is belief in yourself. At the end of the day, you must not look at yourself as a woman or as a man. You're just you. So do you best. And there's no one who can do you better than anyone else. So just be yourself and have that confidence that you can do it, whatever the situation may be. The very fact that you've got a foothold in a particular institution means that you've got ability. So build on that ability, work on that ability, and at the end of the day, just believe that you can do it. Thank you.
I would like to add on possibly getting on to boards. I think put your hand up. Be heard. Do not be silenced. You'll say stupid things, you'll say good things. I'll give an example. I was so impressed by Ora. I was actually thinking, that's a potential board member. She spoke up. I saw her. If we raise our hands and speak, people will notice us. The second thing is, align yourself to strategic decision makers. Once you have connections to people who make some of the decisions, we need engage other people to say, do you have potential names? They can say, I know Davidzo, or I know Shinga, or you can maybe consider those. Some of these, we live in a society where that sort of connection still works.
Just to pick up before, while you're making your way, there's a lady who's got a contribution, but while you're making your way, just the point about aligning. Aligning means aligning to people that are ahead of you in the queue. But those people are men. Don't you? Oh, there aren't enough women there. Dr. Garwe sits on 2 listed boards. And we say, look for someone who's on a listed board. Isn't she going to be overwhelmed by the number of people that are trying to be mentored by her? And how do we break that cycle?
So, I was appointed company secretary when I was 25. And I was, at the time, under the leadership of Pindi Nyandolo. Very dynamic woman. Yes. Yes, at the time she appointed 3 mentors for me. 2 were men, because I think that's what she thought was relevant, but there was also a woman. So you don't always need to limit yourself to one person. I think if you have enough people who you can look up to, have an alliance with, it can help.
I completely agree, and I think the reality is that the majority men are the ones with the control and the decision making and the power in many cases. I can tell you, I wasn't appointed to my position by a woman because the board and the people who were ahead of me were men, right? So I don't think that there's anything wrong with aligning yourself to men and learning from them and all those kinds of things. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
I want to give a very practical response to the lady who asked about how to get on board. There are 2 very practical ways to get on board that I know of. The first one is have a very good 1-page CV which highlights your absolute top 3 expertise that you think would be important for a board. make sure that's housed with your top recruiting agencies. I don't want to give free advertising to anyone, but there's 3 or 4 in Zim that recruit for boards. So a quick Google search will give you that information. Make sure they have your CV, meet with them, tell them that you're interested in. And if you have the qualifications when they're looking, they usually have a very formal process of looking for board members. Dalco is one of them. I'll get my check from them later. The second way, parastatals have a very automated system nowadays. It's been recently automated how they're recruiting for board members. A very sophisticated digital application process. Put your CV on there. Make sure that they're aware that you're looking. And then while you're doing that, build your profile. It's easy to say align yourself to, but I think for a lot of us, we don't know what that means. What does that mean? Does that mean joining an org team? Does it mean waiting outside someone's office? What does that mean? So after you've done the practical thing, exactly what we've done here is fantastic. You've attended a function. And once you've attended a function, make pretty sure you've got your business cards, you're handing them out. Do not be shy. You have to aggressively take it. And I think that's the difference a lot of times between men and women. The good side of aggression when they put it in the context of men is that they go for it and they're very bashful. A man will tell you that he can do things that he probably is not sure that he can. Whereas a woman is like, oh, I don't know if I have to leave that company, or I don't have enough experience, I'm not too sure. So I think that's another way to do it.
Very quick contribution.
I think, people want to, like you say, that women have to show that they can do something before they're appointed to. Men can have the intention to. It's, from a board member perspective, is I think do a lot of volunteer work. That allows you to interact with people at a high level, and they're able to actually see you doing sort of like board duties where you're not in a board. For me, I used to volunteer with my school, with my daughter's school. I was very active. I'd actually go to work at 4 a.m., right, work. At 8 o'clock, I was doing the cake sales. I went on to the PTA. I was a treasurer. I'm actually chairing the board of that school. And with private schools, the clientele rather are people that are business decision makers. And they would obviously see me perform at that level. I also would volunteer in church, do the books, tell them how things should be done. I would do investments for friends and all, and so people would actually see you perform in the role that you want to be. Obviously, I had the benefit of being on the board of the company that I worked for. So with regards to the etiquette and all, I was able to be schooled in that. But basically, I'm saying do what you want to do now without it necessarily being deemed a board member.
And you didn't mention professional societies.
Yes.
Do work on professional. They're so important in people identifying potential board members. People always look to professional societies, whether it's the marketing association or the accounting association. Very important place where we find board members. Can we take 2 last questions? I think we're running out of time. Right, who's going to go first? Okay, they've got the mic already? Yeah,
Hi,
sure.
Yes I do. Good morning everybody. My name is Theodora Kadzinga. I'm from National Foods. I'm the category development manager there for 2 business units. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for hosting this amazing event. I'm really, really excited about being here this morning and I'm so inspired. I served under Dr. Garwe at TRB. I think that was in 2008 for about a month or so. I was a student there. So I'm really happy to see you. I do hope you remember my face. So, yeah. What I just wanted to say is maybe a word of advice or just inspiration to the other women. As women, we are the ones who shoot each other down before the men get the opportunity to do that. My story is very simple. I'm a biochemist by initial profession, and then now I'm in marketing. And when I speak, I make sure that people listen to what I'm saying, because I have a voice. And the reason I do that is because there's something that they should remember about me. Today, remember the lady with the bump, because right now this bump is doing wonders for me. So even when I stand up in a board meeting, when I'm pitching my campaigns or whatever it is that I'm doing, I make sure that the men will listen, and it's very important. like Dr. Garwe has said, men will listen when you have a title. They also listen when you speak numbers. And they also listen when they can see that you know what you're talking about. And as a woman, that is one of my key strengths. I make sure that they remember something. Tall as I am, I wear super high heels. So if I see that people are getting distracted, I simply have to stand up, and believe me, they will look up and have to listen to what I'm saying. And it's really, really important in business. And I'm really happy to see all of you ladies up there. And I've learned something today. I've always wanted to have white hair, but I've been maybe too afraid to do it. So really, when the bump is gone, the next thing is going to be the white hair. They will remember me by that. Thank you.
What's her name again? We need to remember her name. Theodora. Okay.
Don't ever forget that name, Theodora.
Thank you, Theodora, for that contribution. Last contribution.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Mangaba. I'm part of the Standard Bank marketing team. My question is linked to what Theodora said at the beginning about women pulling each other down. But it's not just about women, it's the men as well. There's a common saying that goes around in this country and in other countries to say women cannot work together. So I don't know whether this is a myth or it's true, but putting it to the panel to say, if it is true, how do we undo that? Because a lot of teams in corporations have failed to come together because that statement goes to the front, say women cannot work together, so you cannot put these women together. Make sure there are a couple of men amongst them, or put this woman in this department, so that you have less females in one place. Is it a myth? Is it true? If it's true, how do we sort it out?
Dr. You want to go first? And actually, just before you go, just is it not a question of women believing that there's a limited number of seats for women at the top? So we're all fighting for this limited number. But I'd like to hear your perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why I'm interested in this question is because the top management at the TRB involves myself at the top, and then I've got 2 ladies that report directly to me, and we've got 1 gentleman. So the top management is 3 ladies and 1 gentleman. And when I got into this position, believe you me, it was hard. One of the ladies in that team was not happy with the appointment of me as the general manager. And I'm 100% sure that she probably was not even aware of the fact that she was fighting me. And I had to be very careful not to respond in kind. So I don't believe that it is correct to say women cannot work with each other. It is correct that some people cannot work with each other. And this you find everywhere, whether it's a man or a woman. But it is also important to be very sensitive as an individual, how you respond to the aggression that comes from various quarters, be it men or women. Now, if you come to the TRB now, I think you will find a very peaceful environment at the top. And it is because you have to be sensitive to the various natures of people, their characteristics, how they handle stress, and so on. And it is really important to not look at it as a woman-to-woman situation, but as a person-to-person situation. And if you do that, then you can take away this stereotyping that women cannot work together, because I don't believe that's true. We can work together.
So if I may just, I hear this thing about you shouldn't compete against each other. I think that's wrong. You should compete, but you should compete properly. Compete with regards to your qualifications, to your etiquette, to what you're doing. So there's nothing wrong with women competing against each other, with each other, or against the men, but it's how you're competing.
That's great. Similar to how I wanted to respond as well. It's not a myth, Palmer. I think there are challenges, and the reason why there are challenges is that there's in the corporate world, there's fighting clean and there's fighting dirty. And in my experience, one of the things I've always admired about male relationships in the workforce is that there can be 2 males and they will have it out. I mean, they will literally tear each other apart on work-related matters. It could be that they disagree on a position to take, whatever it is, but it could be a very heated and often I'll use the word aggressive approach to how they point across. But once the meeting is over, if there's any excess angst or aggression, they'll then go into the office, close the door, have it out, next day, back to normal. A lot of the times with women, because and it's a stereotype, yes, this is how, certainly I'm engineered, I'll mull over something and I'll think about it and then I'll think, okay, so I think this to me, she must not like me, maybe it's, what is, so we make it very personal. So I've had to learn in my career that if somebody, a woman or male, if they agree with me passionately, it's actually their job to do that, or we're at work. You know what I mean? And I don't take it personally. So that's the learning that a lot of us need to have so that we can work better together. But I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh no, we'll be braiding each other's hair. It is difficult. It is difficult. Because I think also to get to the C-suite, you have to have also a certain characteristic, which makes you very, very, very defensive or very self-aware, very keen to express yourself.
And sorry to belabor this, but I think it goes exactly back to the stereotype discussion we're having. Don't allow your experience with one woman to define all women. When you meet a man in a role who is a sexist, he's sexist and he's always touching the girls in the office and everybody knows this, you don't walk away from that job thinking that's how all men are. You don't. You don't think all men are like that. So why do we, when we meet a woman who's mean and pulls people down, we're like, that's just how women are. It's not. She is awful. Women as a collective are not necessarily awful. So I think that stereotyping has to stop.
Okay, shall we take another question then?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Gumbo. I am the General Manager for Group Marketing at Fidelity Life. I will get to my question, so forgive me if I may, Under Chairman, but I will get there. One of the things that I have noticed at the two organizations that I've held a C-suite position is that the ratio women to men, lower levels, is usually in favor of women. By the time we get higher up in the organization, that ratio starts to flip over. And my problem with that is that as women who get to the C-suite, we don't speak up. We are not championing the women within our organizations. Last week we had a talent meeting where we're trying to nurture talent in our organization. I refused to support the list of people who had been put forward as potential talent in the organization because there were no women. And I told the human capital team, go back and think about it. You cannot tell me that of the 200 people who work here, you cannot find women who are talented within the lower levels who we can develop. So it is a challenge for those women who do get into the C-suite to speak up, to be the champions of other women within our organizations. Now to my question. We see this ratio thin out. How can we help organizations kickstart the process of making sure that women are doing better within our organizations? We speak about it a lot. We see there's women on boards, there's initiatives around that, there's events like this one. But how can we really get organizations to start thinking about it from a human capital perspective? Really get women noticed within the organizations, really kickstart that process so that that ratio continues to be positive as we get higher up in the organization.
So I think so your point earlier is an excellent point. I do take it, and your question is a good one too. One of the best answers I ever heard to that was actually by one of my clients who is a board member at a big technology company. And she was saying it's very difficult to be the only, right? The only anything, only woman, only black, only whatever, because you always carry this burden of representing your entire race, gender, whatever the case may be. And so you are anxious to seem as though you are promoting people like you. And what she was saying is the most effective way she's been able to drive it in her organization is actually using the company values. So every time she attends any meeting, no matter how big or small, and she sits down at the table, she says to them, So guys, inclusivity is one of our 5 values, right? Isn't it strange that I'm the only woman at this table? Because no one can argue with you about your company values. We all agreed, all of us, that our company values are inclusivity. How am I the only one here? And it becomes a non-aggressive way of forcing other people to have to think about those kinds of things. And as a result, liberating others to do the same. Because now other people in her team, men included, can do that. They can use the values as a lever to open the door to that discussion, to do exactly what you did. How is it possible that out of 200 people we can't find one or 100 women who are very, very talented? And I think using the organizational tools you have, like your values or your ambitions, at TBWA we have a metric that by 2020 we want to have a certain amount of women in our organization. And it's a very powerful tool when you have that strategy, because it asks the question. So we have a 2020 strategy, what are we doing to get there, right? It's not going to happen at the end of 2019, that's too late. What are we doing today? So use the things that leadership have said are important to them, not against them, but as the way to drive that agenda, because that's what they are saying matters to them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Nyamweda. I'm the marketing manager of Marketing Association of Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for the eye-opening inspiration that I got from here. Thank you so much about the stereotypes, especially that you mentioned for marketing. Definitely a point of discussion. We need to take this one further. My question, mostly on a personal side, looking at the women. The balancing factor. I remember one time I was speaking to someone, an accomplished woman. Yeah, she had done it all, she had even gone to the C-suite. But she was telling me that one of the challenges, one of her regrets, was that she never really spent a lot of time with their family. Now the kids have grown, yeah, they are probably going to varsity, and they are strangers. And I know that you mentioned issues about, fine, I want to study, opportunities for women, how do I leave my 2 boys on their own and I'm out there. I noticed possibly in the developed world, you can see that there's that accommodative factor. I have a friend who's in Canada right now who's telling me that I went for my maternity leave for a whole year and I'm going back to my, you see, you can see that in the developed countries, there's that accommodating issues that accommodates me and my emotions and my talents. But here in Zim, I specifically remember a time when I attended an interview, I believe I nailed it. So I then told them that I'm supposed to be going for maternity, it wasn't showing. I could see all their eyes, you know, they all, I don't know, but I saw the impression. The following day they called me and they said that, you know what, I think let's discuss this at another time. So I think they counted the months that I told. They called me, I think it was 4 or 5 months later, but it was too late for me because I had moved on. So those issues about balance for women, how have you, yeah, I know Doc and everyone else is accomplished, and possibly those are some of the struggles. How can organization accommodate a person with their talents and their emotions, and yeah, so that at least they are supported? Thank you.
I think just before the ladies conclude, I've got an example. I was chairman a few years ago. I was chairman of the Net1 board, and we interviewed some people for the role of CFO, which is probably the most powerful role in the organization, and found this brilliant woman with the right expertise, right everything. But someone in, I have to mention this, the CEO didn't like the fact that we were recruiting a woman and he found out that she was pregnant and all hell broke loose. This is before we'd given her the offer letter. So there was this discussion to say, this person is pregnant and we're giving her an offer letter and we're going into a year end, and luckily for me, we had a board of 7 people, 4 of them were women. This is extremely important. 4 of them were women. They did not even want the matter discussed. Says, what relevance is it that she's pregnant? And we gave her the offer letter and she actually took up the job. There must be someone looking out for you. Anyway,
I think it's very difficult. And I remember I left a 3-month-old when I was at BAT. And I was away so long that when I came back, I couldn't even breastfeed anymore. It all dried up. So it's very difficult. And I think, yes, it helps to have people speak up for you. But for me, it's a very clear policy issue. And we're very far away from that. There's no simple approach, there's no soft approach to creating balance. It has to be embedded within the policies of the institution, finish and club. Otherwise, you will never be able to have balance. The reality is that even the level field, the playing field isn't level because, and I always say this to my male colleagues, I don't have a wife, okay? Not that I don't have a husband, I don't have a wife. Because a wife plays such a peculiar, such an intricate, such an important, significant role that unless you have equivalent as a woman, and you never will, no amount of nannies or help can ever match what a wife does for your male counterparts. You'll always be a little bit back, a little bit behind. So unless your organizations are policies that make it such that they're not going to penalize, if you come on board, they're not going to, I think the policies say currently you have to have worked for the institution within a year before you can take maternity leave. So our government policies and our company policies need to change. For me, that's just the clarity. But in terms of, while that's happening, because that takes a long time, one of my mentors at BAT, her name is Nyasha Mutai, and she's now at Stanford. Nedbank. Okay, she moves around a lot. She's very popular. Okay, so she said to me, I was having the same conversation to say, I'm struggling. I've got 2 kids under 5. I have to be traveling everywhere. There's sports day. What do I do? How do I create balance? And she said to me, the first thing you have to do is remember there's no such thing as balance. If you imagine these 2 balls that you're juggling, the only way you can do it is throw one ball so high that by the time it comes down, you're ready to throw the other one. So what that means that if I knew at that point that I was going to be in Zambia for 2 weeks, the week that I'm there, I just go OTT with my son, OTT, so that when I'm gone, yes, I'm still gone, but I don't then have the guilt to say I didn't spend time with him. So when I'm with him in that moment, when I'm with my children, when I'm with whatever space I'm in at the moment, when I get home, I try to be present because I know I'm gone the whole day. So it's difficult.
And I think it's an excellent point about policies. They have to change. And in the interim, I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard from, she was the first female CEO of Unilever, and she was addressing the woman in the business, well, Unilever in South Africa, I should specify. And she stood up there launching this careers platform about, if you want to get to my level, here are the things you should be thinking about, and all the different types of jobs you could do. And then she said, however, and it's a big however, if you want to be CEO of this business or any business, you have to know what that means. And that means being okay with missing things. If you want to be the mom that can go to every sports day and be present in all those things, then unfortunately, the world we live in, you can't be the CEO. It's just, that's not the world we live in today. Right? So say to yourself, okay, I'm going to have to go to Zambia for 2 weeks, so therefore I'm going to miss X, Y, and Z. These are the things I'm going to have to miss, and that's just the reality. And so accept that, and then forgive yourself for it. And it was the most profound piece of advice. If you're not prepared to do those 2 things, then don't become CEO. Become middle management, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with choosing to stay at middle management so that you can attend all these things and be present all the time, etc. It's a completely valid life choice. But if you decide that you want to run everything, make the decision, understand the consequences, and then forgive yourself for doing that.
Balancing is difficult. I always like to, I think in my introduction I mentioned the mistakes I made, the learnings. I'm on my 2nd marriage now. In my first marriage, because I had recently been promoted, obviously I focused a lot on work. And I remember as I was now divorcing with undergoing the divorce, my ex-husband said to me, "You're not married to me, you're married to Stanbic." So it showed that at that time I was not able to properly balance. So I deliberately learned how to balance my time. It was a conscious thing I had to do. Yes, you will miss some things, and yes, you might fall short, but you have to deliberately make certain decisions. What is a priority for you? Is it your children? Do you need to go? Do you need to talk to your boss about it? Is it a company that accommodates this, that you need to be a mom and you need to do a school run? If it's not, maybe look for another one. The second thing I learned was when I had my first child, I worked with a brilliant guy who left the company to move to a smaller entity in Bulawayo. And he asked me at the elevator, "Aisha, how's your son?" I said, "No, he's fine." And he said it stuck with me. He said, "Remember that your children will remember that you were not there." It stuck. After that, again, consciously, by 4:35, I must leave the office. Attend to my children. They'll be asleep at a certain time. Then I can maybe pick up on the emails. On the weekends, there'll be some work events, or I will take the kids for some activity. You just have to find a middle road. It will not always be perfect, but you have to consciously do it, and you have to consciously learn how to do it.
For me, when I introduced myself, I mentioned the fact that I did my PhD sometime after I'd actually started working. And when I started doing my PhD, my daughter was 2 years old. And I left her with my mom. And a few years later, when she was older, she'd always remind me, "Mom, you left me." And it really pained me for a long time. But then I realized something else. Yes, it made an impression on her at that time. But I then tried to make up for it by pointing out the fact that there were certain things that I had to do. So what I realized is it's when you don't communicate that it becomes a real problem. Even if they're kids, talk to them at that level so that they understand what is going on and why certain things are happening. And get buy-in from your partner as well, so that he's able to cover for you for the times that you can't be there. And if you've got that communication thing going in the family, I think it helps to lighten the burden on everybody. As all the other ladies have said, you can't be there all the time. You cannot get the balance right all the time. But if you're talking to your children and you're explaining to them at all times what's happening, I think the children are a lot more accepting than what we think. And I also think that society has to change. It mustn't always be mom who must be there for sports days, for swimming days, for whatever. Dad should also be there. He works, I work, so let's share the burden and let those children understand that it is mom and dad. Okay, fine, there's some families that are single parent families, but where possible, you should talk to your partner so that you share that burden and the kids don't feel that I was left behind.
I think this is quite an interesting topic that we could go on for the rest of the day. Can I ask Sapi just to come and say some final words? Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. The one thing that was said that I'm going to get out of here is the comment to say, forgive yourself for not being there. And I wonder if, as men, maybe that's what we've done. I have discussion, my son is, I'm a grandfather now, my son is got a 2-year-old son, and he's got a bit more time for his son, and we've started having this kind of discussion about how I was never there. I used to look after 3 or 4 countries initially. It grew to 7 countries that I used to look after. I used to travel all the time. I'd come home to change suitcases and go to a different country. And maybe it's a sacrifice that I made, and I forgave myself. I didn't think about it like that. And I think maybe the expectation is as women, you need to to do the same. Forgive yourself for not being there for the time that you're not there. I'd like to hand back to Sapi now. I think I've done enough damage.
Thank you so much, everybody, for staying throughout and actually getting with us to the end. But I think it's really been a worthwhile morning. The insights that certainly that I've gleaned, and I certainly hope that everyone here sitting in respective marketing positions has also gleaned, have been very beneficial. It's been a fantastic conversation. Let's continue it. The panelists are here, so if you still have time and there's still things that you want to discuss or you want to share with them, we are still here. You can certainly still have access to them. But I know that we've got a day to get to. Thank you so much for your time. And let's remember that women are not, I really loved what Aisha said, women are not a consumer, a corporate social responsibility. Women make business sense. Don't ignore 54% of the Zimbabwean population, certainly in our context. Don't ignore the people that are going to control 70% plus of the disposable income. They're worth looking into, worth figuring out how can you align your brand, align your business to this potential market. So thank you very much. Enjoy your day.